The following is a conversation with Emma Storey-Gordon, an entrepreneur, personal trainer, an all-around expert across everything to do with living a healthier, happier, more fit life. Emma's a good friend. She's been on the podcast before. In fact, she was actually one of the first guests. If you go right the way back to the earlier episodes, you can listen to the first one as a segue into this one. What we spoke about today was common myths and misconceptions around how to get fitter, leaner, stronger, faster, bigger, whatever your goal is. One of the interesting concepts that we discussed at length was the law of diminishing returns. And we spoke about just doing 1 hour of exercise across a whole week having a massive impact on your health and well-being, and how adding an hour on each day or even multiple hours each day has a diminishingly positive effect, because the main benefit happens from just doing something. That was absolutely one of the key take-homes from the episode with Emma, was just do something, just move, just focus on eating a little bit healthier and build up to it. We spoke about some of the latest science involved in nutrition, intermittent fasting, giving your gut a rest, how to optimize your hormones. We spoke about training around and after the menopause, which was a topic that the listeners asked us to cover today, so I hope you enjoyed that. I want to express my thanks to Emma for joining us across her very, very busy schedule. Really was an absolute pleasure. It was a lot of fun. I felt like I did a lot of talking in this episode, which of course I wasn't intending to do, but it really was just a really nice, easygoing, free-flowing conversation, and I know the listeners are going to love it. So just a quick call to action. We're making awesome progress with this podcast. It's really starting to take off. There's good traction across all the metrics, and we want to keep going. So to help, please give us a 5-star review, refer us to your friends, espouse the benefits of gut health and Inside Matters. We really, really appreciate it. This is Inside Matters. My name is Dr. James McIlroy. Hope you enjoy it. I'm not as up to speed with the field as you are. And by the field, I mean kind of fitness, health, nutrition, health span, longevity. But one of the things that I've noticed that's changed quite a lot, I think, is the advice around fasting and protein consumption, particularly in the morning. So a few years ago, there was this big push, I think, for fasting being the solution to everything. And people like Peter Attia, Andrew Huberman, Rhoda Patrick would say things like, actually, fasting is really, really important. You shouldn't eat until 11 or 12 or whatever. But there seems to have been a big 360 now, which is that you should eat protein as soon as you wake up in the morning. So that's just one example, whether you agree with it or not. But can you think of any other examples where things have changed quite a lot?
Yeah, I think the fasting one's a good one, because you can actually find research like for and against a lot of these things, and not just research, but just kind of narratives. Like a lot of that realm kind of came from narratives like, oh, you shouldn't eat for this amount of time in the morning, it's good to stay fasted. But no one really said like why. Oh, it might increase insulin sensitivity. But then you could also look at research that shows that your insulin sensitivity kind of peaks at about 12. So the whole idea now is that like you have a small breakfast, a decent sized lunch, and then a small dinner if you wanted to optimize for that. And I, from looking at a lot of the research, and I always try and do this, like my own prejudice is probably a little bit against long-term fasting. Like kind of like what's the point? Now, it might be useful in terms of calorie restriction and just keeping on top of that. But I think a lot of the health implications of it are like blown out of proportion. I don't think we've got the data to support it. But I do think that time restricted eating is much more interesting and more in relation to your circadian rhythm and when you're eating your biggest meals and how active you are. Now, you get all into the science of it, and then when you pull it back to, okay, what's practical for clients, it really is like eat the most when you're most active, which is like, oh,
so around
it does
exercise,
kind of
right?
make like a lot of sense. Like 12 o'clock like tends to be, you do have this circadian rhythm of insulin sensitivity that does peak around that time, but equally you're moving more. You're not having your biggest meal and then going to bed.
And for the listener, like, what would the benefit be of having increased insulin sensitivity in simple terms?
It depends who you are. So most people kind of think this is inherently a good thing, and that would be linked to your risk of things like cardiovascular disease, and specifically type 2 diabetes. But I think if you're already fit and healthy, it's going to make almost no difference whatsoever. If you're someone who's pre-diabetic, maybe be thinking about it, or overweight and kind of leading towards pre-diabetes. The other really interesting group of people is women with PCOS who do have this increase in insulin resistance or reduction in insulin sensitivity. And what's interesting about them is that that's often not caused by being overweight. So for most people, it's the excess of body fat that's causing this reduction in insulin sensitivity. But for people with PCOS, even if they're lean, they often still have this. And one of the really interesting things about the research around time-restricted eating, and I don't think this has been replicated yet, but it was a really interesting study. They matched the calories in two groups of people. Women who had PCOS who were struggling with fertility issues and weren't menstruating. And so they had the same calories. All they did was change the times that they had their biggest meals. So one group had like small breakfast, medium lunch, big dinner. The other group had big breakfast, medium lunch, small dinner. And the ones that ate the most calories towards the start of the day, 50% of them got their menstrual cycle back. Wow. And it was I can't remember the exact, it was like a 12-week study. It wasn't particularly long. And in the other group, nothing changed. And you think, that's huge.
Yeah, it's huge.
You know, especially for people who have struggled with that.
Yeah.
And there's so much, you know, like there's so many kind of invasive procedures in terms of increasing fertility and really hard things to stick to or to put your body through, or the hormonal, you know, implications of that. And actually just kind of changing when you're eating, not even how much.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Did
so
the researchers give any mechanistic
They
thoughts?
found that they had this increase in insulin sensitivity. They thought that might be part of it. But I don't think they fully know exactly why. But yeah, it that's what I find most interesting about not so much the fasting research, kind of distinctly like when you're eating, because most people think that doesn't matter. And I think when they say that, they think, well, it doesn't matter for fat loss. And it's like, yeah, okay, at the end of the day, it's calorie deficit is how you're going to lose fat. But there are other markers of health, right? And even if you're not eating less per se, if you ate at different times of day, that also might have an impact.
So basically, like if you take a 24-hour period or a 1 week period, the total calories you consume versus like the number of calories you use pretty much will dictate whether you gain or lose weight over a period. But potentially how you can stack the calories has an impact on your broader health beyond weight, essentially.
That's what it seems to show, yeah. And then I think on top of that, which a lot of people just kind of ignore because you have to an extent in the research, but your behaviours are huge as well, right? So it might be that you tend to overeat in the evening, but if you know you're having a smaller dinner and you've actually eaten a lot earlier in the day, you're less likely to. And thus, over time, maybe you eat less, or you have better choices around food, or you're more likely, even if you think about decision fatigue throughout the day, I bet you get up and have a better breakfast, and you're much more likely to make poorer choices in the evening when you're tired, when you've made loads of decisions, when you're exhausted, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. When people ask me about like, well, how do I improve my gut health and health more generally? One of the pieces of advice is start your day right. Because if you've had a really solid breakfast with lots of fruit and healthy fats, you know, you're more likely to participate in good eating over the course of the rest of the day because you're setting yourself up for success. Some people go a bit further, and this is not supported by any evidence, but they say, well, you're feeding the microbes the things they like, so then they produce signals to your body to say, I want some more of that.
And don't you think
not
a lot
currently
of
proven yet, but
don't you think a lot of that though is quite just like a nice theory? And then because there's like a bit of theory behind it, again, it's that kind of placebo of, oh, I can almost feel my good signals coming towards, and it's more probably to do with what you said at first, which is that you started your day with a positive. So, and if you've like exercised in the morning and had a good breakfast, you're much more likely to choose a good lunch and then that to carry on versus you started the day eating a bowl of cereal late, woke up late, didn't get to do any exercise. Like, of course you're then going to pick whatever at lunch.
100%. On the last episode, we talked about showing up. I think this kind of ties into showing up, right? Because, you know, if you want to be at your best every day, you need to make your best decisions every day. And it starts as soon as you wake up. Actually, it probably starts the night before. But just going back to what you say about the nice theory, I found that the longer I've been out of clinical medicine, the more in tune I am with the kind of Eastern philosophy and what some people would describe as the woo.
Yeah.
But in the field that I'm working in, a lot of stuff that was woo previously is now kind of real. Yeah. These microbes do communicate with each other through mechanisms we don't fully understand.
Yeah.
And there is a connection between the gut and the brain, right? And they're metabolically active living things. So if you feed them garbage, you're going to get garbage.
Yeah.
Sounding too long in America, garbage. If you feed them rubbish,
yeah,
they're going to give you rubbish. So just to kind of go back to the time restriction eating or when you eat, is there an optimal, in your opinion? Is there like a set of guidelines that people can adopt?
I think so. For most people, now this is quite interesting because I generally give advice that almost opposes this, and I'm going to explain why. So I think from the research, what we know now is probably what's optimal is small breakfast, big breakfast, medium lunch, small dinner. That seems to be like, from a metabolic health perspective, that would be what's best. I actually normally tell people to almost do the opposite, and it's not necessarily how much you're eating, but if you think about most people's life, and that I work with real people that are just trying to, get in a better shape, lose a bit of fat, have something that fits in their life rather than try and mold their whole life around their diet and their mental health and how they're interacting with others and their social life, and that they want to eat with their families. And then a lot of women that come to me as well, they're like, I had such a poor role model growing up in terms of diet that I want to make sure that I'm passing on to my kids like healthy habits, right? Which means eating with your family, not being like, everyone's having this and mum's having a tiny salad, like kids pick up on that kind of stuff. So
that's interesting. I
normally give people like a bit more structure during the day when realistically most people are at work, only have a short lunch break. You're not going to enjoy what you're eating anyway. It may as well be prepped, kind of decision made already. And just like make sure that you're hitting that protein, hitting your fruit and veg target, kind of more eating for function. And then in the evening, worrying a little bit less because you've hit all those targets already. You've been, now, not to misinterpret this, but like quote unquote quite clean, as in you've probably not consumed that many calories. Then you've got a bit more flexibility in the evening. So you're not like, trying to weigh out something to know. Right. You're like, it's roughly 600 calorie meal. I'm going to enjoy it with my family. And then you're still in a deficit. I call that like the 3-to-1 method. So you've got 3 meals during the day, which is like breakfast, lunch, and a snack. That all kind of hit your fruit and veg, hit your protein, are a little bit more like eating for function, make that decision beforehand, prep them, just have them. And then in the evening, chill out a little bit and eat with your family or eat socially, or, at least you have the time to actually enjoy the food.
I love that. Could we just unpack the protein, fruit, veg, snack, like a little bit more, like in terms of setting a target for all of those things and what you recommend?
So
for people?
Most people will set a protein target anywhere between like 1.4 to 1.8 grams per kilogram body weight. For most of the women that I work with, I normally just set them 100 grams. If they get more, and I set it as a minimum. If they get more than that, amazing. But like that's a bit of a minimum. And you
across
can,
the day. Yeah.
And you can get really like this many grams for this and this many grams for this, but I think that's a much easier way for people to actually stick to it. Now, if you're a man, it will be higher. Yeah. So then you need to look at like grams per kilogram, what works for you. But considering I work with most women, and this is such an unpopular thing to say, but most women will do really well for fat loss on 1,600 to 1,800 calories and 100 grams of protein. That's not the hard part, right? People think I need a specific calorie number, or I need something that, that must be what's wrong, how many carbs I'm eating or something. Actually, if you're just consistent on that, that's not the hard part. That actually doing it's the hard part. Yeah. It's creating a life where you can be consistent doing that.
It's simple, but it's hard.
Exactly, yeah.
It's simple, but it's hard. And on the fruit and veg, what do you recommend?
6. Because it's more than 5.
6 different types a day?
Different types, yeah.
Okay, I like that. I like that.
And I don't know what you find about this, but again, I'm all for kind of ease and applicability for people. But there is something, it's like, a serving should be X amount of grams. Do you go into that, or you just like an apple's an apple?
Not. Yeah. No, definitely not. I think, there's a number of principles relating to gut health So whenever someone says how to improve my gut health, they're expecting like, well, here's the, let me just pull out my book with all the secrets. The reality is there are principles like consistency, that you need to do it every day. There's commitment. So if you fall off track one day, you need to get on, train again the next day.
Mm-hmm.
There's starting slow and building up. So people will read like, oh, I need to increase my fibre. Right. Oh, there's some soda that contains chicory root. Not to pick any one particular drink. And now, there's a kombucha and there's a kefir. Okay, right, okay. And I'm going to have a green juice and I'm going to have a beans. And suddenly they're bloated, they're in pain, lots of gas, feel foggy because their body's not used to that. So yes, of course, we could, in the ideal world, create the ultimate microbiome diet. But it's not going to work because there's only a few people who can actually tolerate that much fibre.
And so can you train your gut up?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I find the same with protein.
Definitely.
If someone's like, I'm only getting about 40 grams of protein, I'm like, let's go for 60.
Yeah.
And then let's ease your way up, because otherwise it is like gassy, bloating.
Oh, it's not good.
And then what they do as well, like back to the consistency, is like, oh, that doesn't work for me. I felt awful. I'm going to go back to my previous diet.
Exactly.
And it's too much of a change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of people with like IBS type symptoms, so bloating, abdominal pain, altered bowel habits, will try something and get a sort of violent reaction to it because they've gone overboard.
Mm-hmm.
But what it's about is just slowly building up, because your microbes are going to change based on the inputs you give them. And they are metabolically active. So it makes sense that if you just suddenly give them a whole load of Y, there's going to be a reaction. So it's trainable. It's like a muscle. And like a muscle, you've got to train it every day, or not every day, but within reason.
Yeah.
So I think 6 is good. Some people say you should have 30 over the course of the week.
Yeah, I've tried that as well. Like even just
more difficult.
Well, that incorporates things like, or whenever I've seen it online, it's like you can add herbs and spices within that, and I'm a bit like,
yeah, not sure about that.
I don't know if it really counts, but when you do that, it's actually not that hard.
Or you can take the Zoe supplement.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that? Or can you not say?
I can definitely say. I have nothing stopping me from saying. I think it doesn't represent the views of Interbiotics, although I think everything we're doing is much better. So I find Zoe quite fascinating, to be honest, because I'm not really sure what they're doing in terms of the company. I think it's a little bit of everything. I think they charge a lot of money for the microbiome and blood sugar testing, blood glucose testing that they're doing. I have no idea what value the blood glucose is actually adding to people who are not pre-diabetic or diabetic or an elite athlete. Just not sure. What I find most interesting was they were all about sort of, diversity and personalised intervention. And then I walk into M&S and I see the Zoe gut shot for everybody.
Yeah.
What's that all about? Now, sure, but if it was a full spectrum microbial product, like the one that we're developing at Interbiotics, that would never be available in M&S because it's a prescription product, I would be saying, okay, yeah, I'm kind of getting that.
Yeah.
But when you actually look at what this is and look at the ingredients, I'm like, wow, this is just a bunch of bacteria that are stable in liquid. They've not been selected based on any particular health benefit. So
that's interesting. So they've picked the ones that is easy to put into a shop.
I personally, based on what I've seen, I think it's more about scalability than being sort of really, really driven around what are the phenotypic properties of the microorganisms that are in this, the fibers and so on and so forth. Now, just to kind of give them credit where credit's due, they're trying to improve people's gut health. And a lot of the principles around fiber, bacteria, prebiotics, probiotics are definitely agreed and appreciated and understood. The thing I just couldn't get my head around, to be honest with you, was this personalised microbiome dietary intervention focus, and then suddenly there's a gut shot for everybody.
Yeah.
That I just couldn't understand that, to be honest.
And actually, this is where I'm like, what you're doing is really misleading, but the information for most people isn't so bad. So like I've had clients that have done it, or like, before they worked with me, and they've like, oh, do you want to see my, what I got from them? I'm like, yeah. And it's basically, it's just generic. It's like, eat more fruit and veg.
Absolutely.
There's no, I'd feel even more strongly against them if they were giving like really specific advice of cutting things out. And But actually it's not hugely like that. My other slight gripe with like a lot of the advice of like Tim Spector is that, you know, you have to be upper middle class. Yeah. And I guess like that's their demographic. If you're spending that amount on like getting personalized nutrition, but then what my concern is that messaging being put out to everybody means that
it's unachievable.
Yeah, there's some people that are like, I can't afford to get my personalized nutrition done. So what am I meant to do? And I like distinctly remember him bashing iceberg lettuce, which is my favorite lettuce, right? And was like, you need to be buying like romaine, organic, whatever, right?
And in Waitrose,
yeah, exactly. And just think, well, but you know, if someone's trying to, you know, feed their whole family and doesn't have a huge amount of money to spend on their diet, like it's going to be really hard to be getting these things in.
Yeah, I mean, the most accessible advice would be Heinz baked beans because it's high in fibre. It's a nutritious meal on its own, and wholemeal bread, you know, and maybe some spinach. You're starting to build up a more realistic approach for the broader population. But I'll just a few more things about Zoe. I think the marketing is exceptionally good. I think they're red hot on the marketing. It's beautiful. The packs that they give back to their users, I've seen them, stunning.
Even it's just very identifiable, isn't it?
Awesome. Yeah. They've really nailed that, to be honest with you. I don't know what the end game is for Zoe. I don't know where they want to go. The podcast is also really good, to be fair. Awesome production. I think they actually acquired the podcast studio that I was recording in before. So they're really going for it. And it shows you the power of podcasting if they're bringing it all in-house. Anyways, enough about Zoe, although I'm sure we could do a whole episode on them.
Yeah, it is. And it is interesting. I do think that people now worry about their glucose levels. And my problem with that is sometimes you will make worse nutrition choices because you're worried about glucose spikes when you don't need to be.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
I think that the real issue is, so for example, it is definitely the case that some people, when they eat ice cream, for example, don't get a spike. But when they eat brown rice or sushi rice, they get a spike just because of the nature of their body and their microbes. So they go, oh yeah, I'm going to have more ice cream. Ice cream's a staple. No, that's not how this works. And this brings me back to something you just said, which is like the advice is quite general.
Yeah.
Now, if you listen to one of my episodes with Professor Jack Gilbert, and I did this when I was in San Diego, he's one of the sort of lead people globally. We basically, at one point in the episode, just both burst out laughing because we've come to the conclusion that most of the microbiome advice is just general advice. And he made a comment to say his mum says, you're doing all this fancy research and all you can tell me is to eat more fruit and veg. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, and it is interesting if like you're a bit of a geek and you like knowing all the ins and outs and stuff. But
absolutely,
I think even with the research around glucose spikes and like how you respond to certain foods, what's interesting about that is that there's like the personal element of like I might respond differently to bread than you do, but then there's like within myself that depending on the time of day, depending on what I just ate, depending on if I've exercised, like
exercise is huge.
You know, there's actually way more to it. It's not just like you're good with bread, you're not. It's like depending on what you've been doing and what you've been eating and
pre-test factors.
Yeah, like it has and then you're just like you can't make your diet based on that. Like it's too confusing. And then another really big account, the Glucose Goddess, she talks a lot about adding fats to things to lower your glucose response. Okay. But when you think most people are,
goddess.
Yeah, I know. Most people are struggling to even stay within their calories. Like adding fat to stuff is probably for most people a really bad idea.
Is it really worthwhile? Can you not just exercise a bit more?
But it'll be like the example will be like an apple.
Oh no, it doesn't work like that. The apple's got the fibre in it that sort of yeah. Now it does lead me on to something nice, which is the law of diminishing returns. So when you very kindly came to Dunbar and did a talk to Interabiotics, we spoke about the kind of law of diminishing returns, and one of the most interesting things for me and the company was about the kind of minimum exercise required to get a level of effect. I think it applies to a lot of this stuff that we're talking about. Like there's basics that like make up like 70, 80, 90%, and then there's the icing on the cake. So how much exercise or how little exercise is enough to actually see a benefit?
Yeah, I think it always depends on the benefit you're looking for. But when it comes to health, like if you're doing nothing, and I think this is where people go wrong, they're like, oh, if I was going to go to the gym, I'd have to go 3 times a week for an hour, and I've got the kids, so I can't go. Actually, if you just do an hour of exercise over the whole week And that could be split up into, I mean, even better, honestly, if it's split up throughout the week. 3 20-minute home workouts, could be body weight. You don't need to go to the gym. That has a huge impact on your health and all-cause mortality. And I brought up that graph because I think that graph is amazing.
Just describe it for the listener.
Yeah. I know it's a podcast. It's not a great time to talk about it, but it just shows perfectly the law of diminishing returns and this like really steep curve in terms of all-cause mortality that you get from doing 1 hour of exercise a week. And then it really plateaus off, right? There is still some benefit to doing more, but it really does plateau. Now, some people are like, oh, what about building muscle? Well, that's kind of a different thing, you know, and you might need more in order to keep progressing with building muscle. But when we're talking about the health benefits, which people struggle with because you can't see them, you know, you can't see that. A lot of people will think if they've been going to the gym for 6 months and they've not lost weight or they don't look that different, it's like, well, it's just not working. There's no point going.
That's interesting.
But you can't see what's going on inside your body. You can't see that you're genuinely adding years of quality life to your life. That's so powerful.
Yeah. I think so. What it showed was like an hour of, is it like zone 2 cardio or like a level of cardiovascular
I think it
exercise?
was moderate intensity. So kind of like interpret how.
Yeah. But it was enough to have a like profound, dramatic impact. And then there was an increase, like if you did 2, and then if you did 4, there was a little bit more of an increase, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you get to like the hardcore Ironman training people who are doing like 2 sessions a day, 5 days a week. No additional benefit.
Yeah. Oh, no additional benefit.
None.
And actually it starts
Probably
to kind of tail down. Yeah. Because I mean, any extreme is going to be a negative. So
100%.
When you do get to that level of extreme, it's actually
It's probably not
a bit of a negative, not just in terms of your health, but like the cost of that for the rest of your life. As in, you know, whether it's wear and tear on your joints and stuff, or whether it's like your relationships. If you're training twice a day for hours and hours a day, it's going to impact your career. It's going to impact your relationships. I mean, I've done it as well, right?
Yeah. I'm doing it at the moment, but I'm doing a big triathlon in a couple of weeks.
So if there's an end point, then, you know.
Then we're dialing it back,
Fine. But everything, we kind of spoke about this before we came on, but everything has a cost. You want to build an incredible business. Like, you're not going to have life balance the way that your mates do that have 9 to 5s. No. But if you want the outcome, then you've got to be prepared to put in the effort.
100%. One of the things that I'm wearing my Whoop right now, I'll just be honest with everyone, it's actually run out of battery, so I can't sort of profess to be some like, you know, biometric legend. And even more embarrassingly, actually, I met the clinical director, Professor Jason Leach, for Scotland in the airport lounge, and I was like, well, I'm going to pitch him my business. So I walked over and introduced myself. Hopefully he's listening, because I was wearing my Inside Matters bag on the plane. He was behind me, and pitched him Interbiotics, but also he was wearing a Whoop, so I had a discussion with him about the Whoop, and we were sort of discussing the benefits. Little did he know that mine was actually out of battery. Anyways, but just to kind of circle it back, I only realised when I got a trainer a month ago that I was massively overtraining. And I've got the Whoop now as well. And I was always in red or amber before. And I was doing the double sessions. I was doing these big bodybuilding workouts. And I got this coach called Derek, who's trained lots and lots of top strong men and athletes. And when he gave me a program, I was like, no. I was like, come on, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So Derek, we're going way back to like quite light weights, and I'm doing like one big exercise, and then I'm doing like tiny amount of accessory, and then I'm done. I was like, what's going on here? Strange. But over the weeks, I've just started to feel better and better. My resting heart rate's going down. My recovery scores are going up. So I think I was just, with the job and the travel, completely overtraining.
Yeah. And that's that's kind of the point I was about to make. It's, people think of overtraining as the amount of exercise that you're doing, but it's like, it's two sides of the same coin of like, well, how much recovery are you doing? So that's why, you know, CrossFit athletes might train 3 times a day, and you're like, well, how are they doing it? Well, 1, they're really fit.
Super fit.
And 2, outside of that, they take time to recover. You know, they go to bed at 9 p.m. They go and do like saunas, or, you know, they take all the time outside of training basically as recovery. If you're an elite athlete, that's what you're doing. You're going to the track, you're doing your work, and then you're like,
massage. Yeah.
Now I need to focus on recovery. Whereas if you're doing that and then you're going to a stressful meeting and then you're traveling overnight and then you're moving time zones and then you're not sleeping and then you're just getting a workout in, like,
something's got to give, right?
Yeah.
And I'm starting to correlate the Whoop scores with sort of asking myself when I wake up, like, how do I actually feel?
Mm-hmm.
Do I feel good? Do I feel a bit irritable? Do I feel rested? And before, I think when I had the version like a few years ago, I was just like, why is it red all the time? I don't want to see red in the morning. I don't care. Bye. Terminating my membership. But now I'm starting to notice the greens are correlating with a different feeling in the morning. And I've also stopped eating before bed and all the things that my girlfriend was telling me not to do a year ago, which I didn't listen to. Yeah. She was right. She was so right. Part of it was Brian Johnson as well. I've been listening to him becoming a professional sleeper.
Oh,
I've been amazed. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
I've been completely amazed.
So what things have you changed? Not eating too close to bed?
The biggest one for me was not eating before bed. Now, I used to go to the gym or go to my swim club and then have a huge meal.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest meal was always in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And my rationale was all the Blue Zone families have a big meal at like 8 or 9 at night. And they always have wine and everything. I don't know, it's quite a nice life.
Yeah.
And I would always push back and say, well, you know, if you go to Sardinia or Sicily or Okinawa, they generally eat quite late. But what I've since learned is they do eat late, but they stand up, they walk around, they go to bed much later, they wake up much later, and they sometimes have a nap.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. But the rest of their life is quite... And hey, who's
Super
to say
chill.
that actually that's like correlation, not causation, and they might have even better health if they ate earlier in the day.
It could be way better. And the alcohol side, like maybe they get another year or so. I don't know. Also, they don't drink to get drunk. They just have like one glass of like amazing red wine. So the eating before bed has had a massive impact. That's one. Moving the weight training to the morning has also had a really big impact. Bigger than I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the reason for that is because like when I get to the end of the day at Terabos, I usually start at 8, finish at like 6, sometimes 7, sometimes start at 7, sometimes start at 6. When I get to the end of the day, I'm actually pretty tired, pretty gassed. And then I'm going to do some like squat, bench, deadlift, or when I was with the bodybuilding guys, training to failure, and then sometimes swimming or running after.
Mm.
So it's getting to bed and I was still like a little bit wired.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
So what I found now is the weights are in the morning, a bit of cardio, zone 2 in the evening. Try and do it as early as possible. I've started to use the blue light blocking glasses now as well, so I'm sort of walking around the place with these red glasses on. Sauna, cold plunge, tracking all that. Melatonin.
Mm-hmm.
That's quite a
So
big
you take
impact.
that chronically?
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
I am. Yep. 500 micrograms to 1 milligram.
Mm-hmm.
The American supplements are like 10 milligrams, which
I know,
is just
and you can just get, like, here it's quite
outrageous.
hard to get, but I stocked up over in America.
You can get it here. You have to say you're doing shift work or you're doing travel and you're time shifting.
Oh, okay.
And you can get a script for pharma grade over here. Yep. Yeah, Nordic Labs, I think, is the company. So bit of melatonin. The zinc, magnesium stuff I completely stopped. Another interesting thing, this is becoming a podcast about me, not about you. You're the
it's
expert. Why am I talking so much?
No.
I, for quite a long time, had some like very low level psoriasis on my shins. When I stopped taking all the supplements, including AG1, it's gone.
Huh.
Heavy metals?
Maybe.
Crazy. Really weird. It's strange. And it's the only thing that I've changed, but it could also be the
Better sleep.
better sleep. It could be all of that. And also I went on holiday, a couple months ago and then it disappeared. But
Yeah. And I guess like the stress as well, like often your skin gets worse when you're stressed and you're overtraining and all these sort of things, like your immune system's kind of dampened.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And the thing is, if you're, I think...
But no, definitely AG1.
No AG1.
That was it. That was the thing. That was what was causing it.
But they might be sponsors for this podcast in the future.
They probably will be.
No, I like AG1. It tastes good. It's good. No, I have actually stopped all of that. It has made an impact. I have not noticed any other like detrimental. But I have been really amazed at my energy levels. Even though I've always had a lot of energy, it's been like sky high. Ability to focus, more calm. All really to do with the sleep and recovery. And I think most CEOs are probably chronically under-recovered, even if they don't train.
Oh, 100%. I actually think one of the biggest things there, especially for me, is exercise in the morning. In terms of focus, creativity, mood, and instead of going to bed wired, you're going into work a little bit wired.
I like that. That's
which
good.
is actually,
That's good. So what's
what
your
you
stack
want.
then? Like, how are you planning your weeks? And
I have to say, I'm going to be honest, really badly at the moment. There just doesn't seem to be enough hours in the day. But I am a big morning person, so I want to get up, exercise. I've been doing a lot more cardio recently. Still lift weights. I don't train for hours and hours. It'll all be within an hour.
that's good.
Get some sunlight, have a good breakfast. Weird thing I've been doing recently, although I think it will change towards summer, but I've been having a salad for breakfast.
I quite like that.
And do you know what? So good. I just think
Start your day
I'm just
right.
who makes the rules? I want to have this, So that's been happening, getting in decent amount of protein, and then I'll start my day. But by that point, I've already done the writing in the morning. I've trained. I wake up, I'm most creative then. Get a bit of caffeine in me,
when
go
does
and
the
do a
coffee start?
workout.
Because there's a debate, isn't there? About, if you
the
wait a little
Huberman
bit.
thing was a bit debunked, wasn't it?
So Huberman says you got to wait an hour and a half, which really upsets me.
Yeah, and then
Has that been debunked? I'm very happy.
Oh yeah,
to hear it.
100%.
It's debunked.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah. So I just have it as soon as I wake up. But I never stopped having it. I always thought, I never actually saw, I can see again the theory, but there was no research behind it. And now they've done some studies behind it, and no.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
That's actually one of the highlights of my day.
Yeah, there you go.
One of my favourite things in the machine is that sort of fresh coffee.
And it's the smell.
Smells just too good. And I've been fighting a battle in my head, make it sound like such an addict. The last couple of weeks I've been like, no. In my mind I've got whoever it is, Andrew or Chris Williamson, in the morning it's cortisol and adrenals. Have your element. Don't have your coffee until an hour and a half after. That sucks. That's a long time to wait. So how has it been debunked though? Because the science kind of made sense. You were still clearing out adenosine.
It made sense, but I think on a practical level, nothing changed on that front. I'll send you the post of the guy that did
delighted.
it. He's really good. If you don't follow him already, Menno Helmsman.
Oh yeah,
so good.
Yeah. I think I know who that is. Yeah. There's another lady I followed recently called Dr. Guess.
Nicola Guess.
Who's just trashes.
You need to get her on the podcast.
Yeah,
she's London-based as well. She's
awesome.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, she's awesome. She just
and she's quite sassy
Zoe.
as well.
Yeah.
I love it.
Is she your friend?
I've been to one of her conferences before.
Right.
But yeah,
awesome.
she's so good.
I'd love
That's
to.
my favourite Substack follow as well, is her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's really good.
Yes. So Substack is. So can we just move on to business for a little bit and go back to health? So how have you gone about building your businesses? Because there's multiple different things. You've got your Substack, you've got your training, and you've got people working for you now. How have you built that up? And
so the Substack is really just giving out value and hoping to help people, and then if I help them, hopefully they want to come and work with me, or they get some kind of benefit, right? So that's really marketing, lead generation. It does make a very small amount of money that I give to charity anyway, because I don't want to. I think it's American based and all these tax, and I was I don't want to fill in forms. It's a couple of £1,000s a year. I just give it to charity.
Some people do make good money on their Substack.
Yeah. If you're a writer, for sure. But it's the same with podcasts. I don't try and monetize mine. The monetization is my business. So I don't put ads on. I don't sponsor it. I don't, it's lead generation. It's giving out value so that people see who I am, how I coach, what they can get from me. So
just while we're here, your podcast for the listeners, how do they find it?
ESG Fitness. But also, if you're business related, AF Mentors, or if you're a coach, EIQ Nutrition. So I've got a few.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
It's really funny because previously we spoke, some people maybe from, dare I say it, Dundee, don't really understand. So are you still doing the Instagram thing?
Yeah. So, are you still doing that little thing on it? I'm yeah. I think more people are coming round to the fact that a lot of people can make a lot of money online. And now they're a little bit amounts, right? I wish I hadn't just thought that was a really gimpy thing to do and just never got into it. Now they're how do you do that? I'm
there you go.
Start 10 years ago, build a reputation.
Yeah. But there's still opportunities now, right?
Oh, yeah. I work with a lot of coaches who are brand new, but you still have to put yourself out there. And this is the thing, you still have to take yourself seriously at 50 followers.
Yeah.
As you do at 500,000 followers, right? And I think that's what people struggle with.
Like that.
And same with podcasting. It's like, actually, you need to prep for it. You need to take it seriously before other people take it seriously. And as your business as a whole as well, it's very easy to be like, oh, it's just this thing I do on the side. It's not that important. It's like, no one's buying into
really
that.
Important.
You need to take it seriously before other people do. Yep. You need to back yourself before other people do. And like, you're a great example of that. And then you managed to get investment in. But like, you had to have that belief. I bet at the start people were like, that's a mad thing to do at med school. What are you doing?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what a waste of time. Like, we should just be studying. Or
everyone said it was going to fail.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. But you have to believe in yourself. And that fake it, I believe in not the fake it until you make it thing. But I do believe that, as soon as you become a CEO, even if it's one company, you're a CEO, which means you have responsibilities. It means you have to show up. And it means that work is a priority. So all these people who, get trashed on a Thursday, who are playing games on a PlayStation or with some other device until 3 a.m. every night, and who are never prepared for their meetings, who show up late, who don't look after themselves, good luck. Because you're competing against people who are. And you're competing against people who are obsessed.
Yeah.
Completely obsessed. You need to be obsessed if you want to win. Yeah. So going back to the interbiotics thing, I became obsessed pretty quickly with the microbiome, and it was a complete, and it still is a complete obsession. That's the only way to describe it. So I know every single microbiome company that's big. What do they do? What's their technology? Who's their CEO? What was their last press release? I could tell you because I'm obsessed. I just like it.
Yeah.
And you're winning if you find an obsession that can make you
because no one's going to outwork you.
No.
Because you asked me to do that, and I'm like, I'm not interested in it. Whereas I'm the same. If I'm into something, I'm like, I know it all. I could spend hours researching 100%. This. I spend days and days, and I'm so fascinated by it. But I think that's one of the key things that a lot of people miss, is that if you do have that passion for something, no one's going to outwork you.
No.
And if you've got that real drive, like Simon Sinek, start with why, that kind of thing. If you kind of know why you're doing something, or that you're really passionate about it, no one's going to outwork you.
There we go. And this brings us back to the businesses then. So tell us more about your businesses.
So I have the kind of direct to client, which is, there's a couple of phases of that. There's one-to-one coaching, 6 coaches that do that with me. I've still got a few one-to-one clients.
They're all
actually.
Online?
All online. All of these are online.
Okay.
Then I have group coaching, Commit to 6, which is a smaller group coaching where they still get quite a lot of one-to-one support. And then I have a bigger group coaching that we just try and help as many people as possible. That's with Chloe Madeley. It's called the EC method. So that's the coaching side of the business. And then actually where I spend most of my time now is developing other coaches. So I have 2 businesses that do that. One is EIQ Nutrition, which I do with Dr. Amelia Thompson. She's incredible. So we built that together. It's a course to help personal trainers coach their clients and not negatively impact them.
How did you know that it would be great to go into business with Dr. Thompson?
So the story behind that is, we went on a little trip in Scotland. There was 3 of us. And she was talking to me about how a company had approached her and asked her to write a nutrition course. And I was like, well, you just did that. So someone else had asked her to do it as well. She did it for a supplement company. And I was like, you just did that. And they massively undersold it. And you had to basically just regurgitate your a standard university course with a little bit of spin on it. I was like, if you're going to do it for these people, charge twice that, because they're going to make that in one intake, and then they're going to have all your stuff forever. Yeah. It's worth so much more. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, well, just do it yourself. I was like, make the course yourself and then just sell it yourself. They want to buy it from you more than they'll want to buy it from them. And she was like, oh, I don't know. And then she was like, well, would you do it with me? And I was like, fuck yeah, I'll do it with you. I'd love to do that. So that's really grown.
Oh, I love that.
And I'm really passionate about that. There's been almost 1,000 EIQ coaches now.
Wow.
And I'm so proud that genuinely everybody that leaves that course, I know they're going to be incredible coaches. So the impact that can have.
I really like that.
And I think when we go back to start with why, I always really wanted to impact a lot of people, which is why I never found personal training that interesting. So I was quite quickly, these are the amount of people that I can coach in this small gym, in this one location. That's not that much impact. Whereas I really wanted to impact more people. So that's why I went online. And then that's why I developed group coaching. And then that's why I took on the coaches. And then that's why I was like, well, if I could teach more coaches some of this stuff, then we built EIQ. And then what I realized is that a lot of really good coaches, and this is kind of like the imposter syndrome element, a lot of really, really good coaches know enough that they don't know that they don't know that much. So they're very aware of what they don't know, and they start to delve into like maybe your area of research or the gut microbiome. And they're like, I don't feel like I'm ready to talk about how to help people improve their health because I don't know every single thing about every single microbiome. And then they get really caught in that and they get really bad at marketing themselves, and they kind of like lose confidence a little bit. So you have these incredible coaches that could be helping so many people, but they don't have like the confidence, the marketing skills, or the business know-how to do it. So that's why I built AF Mentors, which basically helps coaches help more people. So I genuinely only want to work with really good coaches. I always screen them before. I always make sure they're aligned with, you know, the kind of information I think should be put out. And then I will help them build their businesses.
And for the listener, do you manage all of this from your computer? Like it's all, you know, you can kind of work wherever you want, so to speak. Yeah, anywhere. I love that.
Which is really cool. I probably don't take enough advantage of it.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
It's very different to
on the flip side though, like it can be hard to get into a routine when you're away, and I like having the right people around me, and I think that I've noticed that has been a huge impact, like who I've got around me, and even what we were talking about with like trying to get funding in certain parts of the world versus, you know, other parts where it's like, we get that all the time here. It's like an entrepreneurial hub, and that really rubs off. Now you can get a lot of that online, but I think just like me and one of my best mates go to a coffee shop most days. He works online as well, completely different industry, but running ideas off him. And he's got such a like growth mindset as well. That's not awesome. Like, oh, that would never work. It's like, why couldn't that work?
I love that. I love that. I think coming to a big city like London, like San Francisco, Paris, New York, Boston, you know, if you're trying to make something of yourself, it's just so many more opportunities, just random, you know, spontaneous, almost accidental opportunities to be successful, because there's more people here. It's a pool. Whereas, you know, you started in Dundee.
Well,
or was it Edinburgh? Where did you actually start?
Interesting. Jordan, who I was just talking about, we lived together in Dundee.
Really?
So like managed to find, and I did manage to hunt out probably the most ambitious person in Dundee to live with, which I think was like partly coincidental, but it worked really well.
It's the universe. It
is the universe. It's a sign. But yeah, no, I do think even just, this is such a weird thing to say, right? It makes me sound probably like such a loser, but I love the big buildings here. Yeah. Like I'll walk around the city and I'll be or like I don't know, you're going to Canary Wharf for the meeting?
I'm actually going to Knightsbridge.
Okay, well,
still,
like,
I mean, come
even
on,
just like walking around
London.
like, Canary Wharf or something, I'm like, and I don't care about these big buildings really. Like I don't want to work in one, but I'm just like, there's stuff going on
energy
here. Yeah.
You walk into a coffee shop, there's deals being done in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not, I mean, the West End of Glasgow where I live, I love the West End of Glasgow. And when I took off today from Glasgow Airport, I could see Ben Lomond and the Korean Larrick Hills, and I was like, God, I just love it. I love that. But then when I got here, I was in Bank and City in our lawyer's office, because we use their office for free, thank you. Because we pay them. There's deals being done. You can just feel it. Yeah. You can just feel the energy. Stuff's happening. Yeah. You know, business is happening. And I love that. It's infectious.
Do you also think, though, because I'm the same, I get so much energy being in London.
Yeah.
But sometimes going home to do like almost like work phases, and by home I mean like Scotland, where like really not that much is happening. You don't have as much FOMO, you're not missing out on as much, there's not as much fast pace, but you get a lot done. So it's almost like periods of time for like being inspired and creativity, and then periods of time for like ignore all that, because some of it is a distraction.
Just get stuff done.
And it's like, I know I need to get this stuff done.
Absolutely.
Get it done.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the best things about running a company like Interabiotics is there are tons of very smart people in our company. Loads. Like incredibly capable, super intelligent people who think differently. When you know that, because you speak to them, but also we did some personality mapping recently, and we actually are all very different. And I get really excited about, well, I'm going in the office today and everyone's going to be there and we've got this research and development workshop, or we've got a whiteboard strategy session. I know I'm going to learn a huge amount. So I'm very lucky in that, even though we're in Bells Hill, which is actually, 20 minutes outside of Glasgow, it's not known for being a business hub. As soon as we walk through the door, we've created this environment where we've got a lot of super smart people and we're buzzing. We're like, okay, what problem are we solving next? So there's that. But if I was to start another one, I would probably be coming to the Boston, New York, Oxford, Cambridge, London, the life science hubs, because you're surrounded by investors. There's a capital base here, those other entrepreneurs. And what you're talking about with Jordan, bouncing idea, that's just priceless.
But then I can see, like, there's pros and cons to both, isn't there? Especially if you're a startup. Like, I was talking to my mate the other day, and may or may not do this, but it kind of reminds me of that you said that Zoe bought over like a podcast studio, which makes sense. Like, if you're paying a podcast studio loads, just buy it.
Yeah.
And
bring them in house. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One thing that I know, and the way that I built all my businesses is basically for people already, right? So one thing that a lot of personal trainers want is branded kit, and nothing I've seen has done drop shipping particularly well. So part of my, you can tell me after.
Not drops it. No.
Oh, okay.
I'm very particular about my clothes. Not that I like very expensive clothes, just to be really clear. I don't. I like unbranded clothes
me too.
that fit really well and that are quality and that last. So this particular branded garment is from Spoke, which does menswear. Same with the trousers that fit perfectly. You can sort of customize all the things. And then we worked with someone to just embroider.
Brand it, yeah.
But I was looking at doing some Inside Matters branded stuff. Couldn't find any good drop shipping.
Yeah, because that's what's missing a little bit. And if you've got, like, I work with a lot of coaches that run online businesses, and if I could set up the automation and the like know-how and knowing that it's good kit and everything and it's drop shipped and they need to think about it, such a good like retention model. Or imagine you sign up and they send you a little pack with, whether it's like a similar like Zoe pack or it's got a t-shirt, and then you've got people walking around with your branding. Like,
you feel you're part of something.
Anyway,
right?
I was thinking about that a little bit, and I was like, if I set that up in London, God, you wouldn't find a space for that. I didn't even look at the price because I was like, I know it would just be ridiculous to have like a little warehouse or something.
Oh yeah.
In Dundee, £7,000 a year.
Yeah, come out near us in Bells Hill.
Exactly. It's like,
we've actually got a spare warehouse.
There you go. But like you'd probably find someone who's like, yeah, well, we don't use that, so just pay the electricity bill, and you're like, but whereas here it's like, that's as much as your house in Scotland.
Yeah.
You don't want to be.
That's the difference. No, you're right.
Yeah. So, and when you're starting out, obviously that really matters.
You're right. And I think you can build companies virtually now as well, really well. A lot of drug development companies are now entirely virtual. So they're called virtual asset centric. So they're virtual, they've got one product, and they subcontract all the various different things to other companies. And you can have one person in Boston, one person in Oxford, one person in Australia.
So they're basically a marketing company.
They actually, no, because the product's not in the market. They're a extremely technically capable project management powerhouse.
Okay.
But you still need the CEO to go and sell the vision, because even the way that it works in these companies is that you have like an idea, and then you have a molecule, or you have a receptor, and you want to do something new.
Okay.
Usually it spins out of university. Sometimes it spins out of a company. Sometimes it's just entrepreneurs going, let's just do this. There needs to be some money, so you need your leader, and then you need your technical experts. Every single aspect of moving the drug from a test tube to an animal, or an animal to a bigger animal, or an animal to the first human study or a bigger study is a huge leap.
Yeah.
And the company value goes up as well. And to get there, it sometimes takes 6 months to 18 months to 24 months. And it's like a wiggly line that's going all over the place. You have to pivot, change, work with this company. Data's not good, go back, iterate. And your core team would be able to plug into scientific experts in this field, experts in regulatory. So no one's actually on the payroll other than the small core team. So it's all fractional and it's all variable.
Yeah.
And the thing about drug development is, unlike your business where you've got revenue and it's recurring and you can predict, there's no revenues. So it's like, how can you get from point A to point B the fastest so you can raise more money to go to point C and D?
And how do you know someone else isn't doing it at the same time?
That's difficult. And it's about execution and intellectual property. But you're right, you don't know. And you can be absolutely sure that if you've got a great idea, a lot of the biggest venture capital firms have thought about it, and they've got 10 PhDs thinking about the same thing. But going back to the marketing, the supplement industry is marketing.
Oh, 100%. And
So
actually,
how good's
you
your
can,
funnel? And
well, yeah, because you can drop ship.
Right,
You know,
yeah.
you can go online now, you could make a label, you could call it whatever you want, and you could be selling it online.
yeah,
And you'd never touch the product.
Yep.
You don't have to buy stock.
Yep.
It's all done for you. They just change the label.
right.
Like, so it's all
Marketing funnel.
marketing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even if you go and look at like Alibaba or something, like where they kind of get a lot of this stuff and you can drop ship things, a lot of the packaging you can tell is certain very popular supplements because it's exactly the same.
Wow.
And then you look at the markup and you're like,
Yeah, oh goodness gracious, yeah.
Yeah.
It's next level.
yeah.
Huge profits.
Yeah, but then, and I guess huge profits, but they do spend a lot on marketing because that is
Right,
the
that's the
key
way to
part
do
of
it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, because the product's not like like the difference between one protein powder to another protein powder is like it's not like
No.
enormous. I'm sure there's some that are like organic and
Yeah.
no sweetener and that kind
And
of
they
stuff.
have a much worse markup because they probably have gone to the effort of getting it developed and using organic product, or you hope that they're not just saying that and it actually isn't. But if they have, then obviously the markup's not as good. If they're like, oh, we'll just get this unbranded protein supplement that's chocolate flavor, stick my sticker on it,
And go
start
for
selling
it.
it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Right, now, before we kind of wrap up, I would like to speak to you a little bit about the work that you do with women who are going through the menopause.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right in saying that most of your clients are women?
Yeah, most are women, and now most are perimenopausal women or postmenopausal. Yeah.
Okay. What are some of like the key learnings and tips and things you might do differently for people that are at that stage in their lives?
So I would say the biggest one, and people probably don't like this, but the biggest one is to listen to them as human beings first. So I think a lot of people will brand people with the brush of like, oh, you're perimenopausal, you should be doing this, or you shouldn't be doing this. I've got perimenopausal women who have almost no symptoms and train exactly how they used to train and are in great shape. And I've got others who have found it really hard and have ended up putting on a lot of weight and who are struggling to exercise and who can't quite or maybe struggling with depression. You know, it completely depends. Everyone's experience is completely different. And I think now, because we speak about it more, which is a great thing generally, but the negatives of that are most women are now scared to go through the menopause because there's so much fear mongering around it. And because you only hear about poor experiences, right? No one's like on the front page of the newspaper being like, I went through the perimenopause and nothing bad happened, because you're just like rubbing people's noses in it that are struggling. Yeah. So you don't hear about that. And much like with women giving birth, you normally only hear about like the horror stories, right? You're not
That's
like,
true.
yeah, I just had quite a normal birth.
Yeah.
You know, you
Right.
don't hear so much. So there is that element of like negativity bias. And then secondly, it's become a huge marketing thing for like selling
Everything.
supplements. Yeah. Well, everything, but like specifically supplements. And then in my realm as well, like exercise specific for perimenopausal women and like, you know, what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing, all that kind of stuff. So the truth is you really need to treat the individual in front of you. You need to treat the symptoms that they're having.
Yep.
If you are taking HRT, a lot of the potential changes that previously I would have been like that might make sense, like maybe lowering training volume because of lower estrogen levels impacting your ability to recover from exercise. If you're taking HRT, a lot of that's kind of mitigated anyway.
Yeah.
But if you're not sleeping well, then obviously your training is going to be impacted. If your mood's lower, then obviously your motivation levels are going to be impacted. So it's really just listening to the individual and knowing that even throughout the month, and I think this is one of the hardest parts, is that women often experience like mood fluctuations, motivation fluctuations throughout the month.
Yep.
But when you don't know when your cycle is coming or if it's coming, or if those fluctuations, you know, like, or if you're like, am I just in a really bad mood all the time now? Or am I like struggling with some kind of like hormonal fluctuation or mood shift because of that? That can be really hard to manage. So yeah, I think it's just like having a bit more support, but also knowing that you don't have to cram yourself into a box and you don't have to put limitations on yourself because of this. And I've had clients that have come to me that are like, yeah, I was told I shouldn't be doing HIIT training anymore because it's going to increase my cortisol levels and they'll already be high because I'm going through the menopause and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, that if you love HIIT, and do you know that actually the thing that comes up the most is like, I love spin classes or I love Les Mills, but I've had to stop them.
But why? Yeah.
Exactly, because of this like cortisol idea. And normally that's followed by the person this is from with, you should be resistance training, which is true. But what tends to happen is they get overwhelmed with how to resistance train. They stop doing the exercise they love and then they do nothing because they're like, but I thought I was doing a good thing and then I told I wasn't doing that good thing. And now I'm told to do this thing I don't understand. So I'm just going to do nothing. And that's the worst possible position. Like, doing a Les Mills class is fucking great. Like, if you love that, if you enjoy it, if you get social stuff from it, like, I'd be buzzing if my mum was doing that.
So keep doing it, basically.
Yeah. And hey, maybe it's not quote unquote optimal.
Right.
But if it's optimal versus nothing.
Yeah.
Or if you can also add in a resistance training workout, but don't fearmonger over your spin class.
So basically just keep doing what you were doing before as much as possible. Yeah,
which for some people is completely unrealistic, right? If they are really struggling with symptoms. So then it's about bridging the gap between like, okay, what are you doing now? How can we get you moving a bit more? And the thing is, all of the research, kind of the only thing that is conclusive about how to treat perimenopause is that diet, exercise, lifestyle modification is the ultimate treatment. But when you feel like shit, when you're having hot flashes, when you've put on weight and you don't feel like anything has changed and you can't understand it, and you have this kind of shift in body fat that often occurs where you store more around the middle and you feel really uncomfortable and your motivation is low and you're not sleeping, you're not likely to want to improve your diet and exercise, right? So you kind of need to gradually get people there, because you know that's what is going to have them feeling their best. But to go from 0 to 100, people just give up.
So it goes back to the principles of starting slow, building it up, not doing too much. Yeah.
But not so, because this is the other thing. It's like, start slow, but not so slow that it's boring for people. You know, if I was like to you, all right, all we're going to do is just add 1,000 steps a day, you'd be like, I'm not excited enough. You know, it needs to be somewhat of a challenge.
My coach saw me on Monday and he came up and he went, "You're not supposed to be training today." I was like, yes. Me? I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to be here. Coming in a hoodie. But no, you're right. It's got to be stimulating for people.
I think it has to push people just outside their comfort zone, but not a million miles so that they just feel like giving up.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Well, Emma, we've covered an awful lot again. Thank you for coming on and sharing all your expertise and wisdom. And you've shared your business handles for the listener. Maybe you want to share your socials as well? Yeah, so at ESG Fitness is probably the hub you'll find everything. I won't list all of them. On Instagram? Yeah, and if you have any questions, you can get me there. And if you want to know about the business side or the education platform or whatever, just message me. Excellent. Thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you.